Hey, everybody, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Today is going to be a great show for a couple of reasons. Jeff Sentell going to be with us a little early in the program today. We're going to do all the recruiting stuff with him. That is going to be a blast. He was in Plantation, Florida with Tyson Campbell and his family. Jeff will have some great stories to tell about that. And some of you on the video comment section had asked me to do something, show something on the show today. Well, you know what? I'm going to begin with that. One of those great signing day moments that you may have missed, but if you did, you'll love it right now as DawgNation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I am nothing if not a man of the people. At least that's what I try to be. I try to play the hits, so to speak, here on DawgNation Daily, do the kind of things that you want me to do, talk about the subjects you want me to talk about. And along those lines, you know, we do DawgNation Daily on video each and every day, and there were a lot of video comments this week about, oh, BA, you've got to play Rylan Goatee's commitment on DawgNation Daily. You've got to show folks that, because there is a sense in which some people may have missed this. I mean, we obviously know the story from Wednesday. Georgia was the #1 class in the country for 2018, and you know Georgia added so many big-time 2018 names: Tyson Campbell, Otis Reese, Quay Walker. On and on the list goes. Tommy Bush near the end of that day there. There were so many 2018 names sort of added that it could have been easy to overlook the one name that Georgia added to its 2019 class, the big 6'7" tight end Rylan Goatee from Kennesaw Mountain High School there in Ackworth, Georgia. But if you did miss the Goatee thing, you missed one of the great commitments of all time. And I know at times here on our program I have a tendency to maybe be a little hyperbolic, maybe sort of exaggerate claims from time to time. I'll admit that may be true. I don't believe if you're a Georgia fan this is an exaggeration, though. Goatee was at Sport and Social with a lot of the other folks who made their 2018 decisions, and well, his announcement was just a little bit unique compared to anything else we've ever seen before. Incorporating the trumpeter for the battle hymn of the Bulldog Nation here. I love this. If you've missed it, you'll love it too. Listen if you're on the podcast or on the radio. Watch it here with us on video, and we'll all celebrate a pretty good moment for the program. Take a look.
First off, I'd like to thank my Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. Without him, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you. My family, my grandparents that are here today, my parents, especially my sister, who is the real athlete of the family. And I'd like to thank all my coaches, from Coach Danny and Coach Hansen and Coach Carmine for just believing in me these last few years. And here we go. So the next 4 years, this is a group decision. I have some friends that wanted to help make this decision for me. So I'll be playing baseball and football for the next 4 years at a certain school, and if you wouldn't mind turning your eyes up to the stairs.
So listen, I just thought that was really, really cool. And if you go to Georgia games and you're familiar with the traditions associated with the program, that sort of battle hymn trumpeter before the beginning of every game, obviously here on DawgNation Daily, we're huge fans of the Red Coat Band. We love that tradition before the start of the games. And it's really cool that that Goatee would do that would sort of incorporate that into his ceremony, because what it gives you the sense of for him is this is a guy that really wants to be at Georgia, that appreciates the program as a fan first, and certainly that's going to make him, I think, even more motivated to be a great player for the University of Georgia. So I thought that was kind of a really cool thing, and I wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to sort of experience that. We broadcast it live here on DawgNation, but sometimes this stuff sort of falls through the crack given all the other success that Georgia had on National Signing Day. Something else about this that I thought was kind of interesting, you know, Ian Boyd, who's a sort of a X's and O's type writer, does some work for SB Nation. I'm going to make sure I put a link to this at the show page when we post the podcast at DawgNation.com today. He was writing about, you know, recruiting profiles and did your team recruit the right kind of players for 2018, and what he wrote about the 2018 class also makes me think a little bit about Goatee for the 2019 class, and the other guys that play his position that Georgia added for 2018, like Luke Ford and John Fitzpatrick. And, you know, a lot of Georgia fans have been frustrated from time to time about the fact that Georgia just hasn't used the tight end enough, hasn't thrown to the tight end enough. But when you read what Ian Boyd wrote at SB Nation, what you kind of find out is sometimes you don't have to use the tight end for the tight end to be valuable. In some cases, the tight end is valuable just by being on the field. And I'm not trying to, sugarcoat, this. I mean, obviously, Georgia needs to throw to tight ends more, probably. But what Ian Boyd writes is, a survey of the playoff results suggests that Jim Moore, the old UCLA coach, was actually right when he noted that spread teams never win the title. If you take into account his clarification with the need for using a tight end to attack the middle of the field, the teams that have won the national championship have either featured really good receiving tight ends that could force double teams inside that freed up outside receivers, or guys that could block defensive linemen and linebackers to create angles up front for the running back or the quarterback in the run game. Once again, that is Ian Boyd from SB Nation kind of laying out just how important and how critical the tight end position is for teams that want to win the national championship. Sometimes Georgia fans say, well, we haven't seen our team throw to tight ends enough. But a lot of the rest of college football would say, even having that guy on the field as that sort of fourth option as a receiver, a guy that can also block, it opens up a whole lot more for the rest of the offense. So as Georgia makes its push in 2018, 2019, 2020 for trips back to the college football playoff and that elusive national championship, my expectation is the tight end is going to be a big part of what the Dogs do. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Good to have you with us here on video today. If you're watching us at 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Facebook page, on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, or in podcast form, wherever podcasts are found, iTunes, SoundCloud, and world-famous DawgNation.com. Pretty much wherever you go for podcasts, you can find DawgNation Daily. We're glad you have found us today. We're going to be slightly different on our program today in comparison to kind of maybe some of the schedules we've had in the past. Coming off the end of National Signing Day, I thought it would be important to kind of get to Jeff Sentell a little earlier in the program. If you're listening on the on the podcast or video, you'll notice that Jeff comes in a little earlier here into our show than normal. We want to give a chance for you to hear as much as possible of Jeff as soon as possible in terms of his reaction to everything that kind of goes down with Georgia's 2018 class. So it's going to be a fun conversation with Jeff Sentell coming up. And by the way, also for those of you on video, we're going to have also a really fun opportunity here to take a few more comments today than normal. I know that yesterday we took probably fewer comments than we certainly had the opportunity to, given the fact that there are a lot of folks that still want to sound off and share their own opinions about the 2018 recruiting class. So we're going to give you a chance to do that on a video today. It's going to be a really fun episode of the program. Hope you'll stick with us later on, because we're also going to survey kind of everything else going on in the world of UGA athletics. It'll be time for our Kroger Click List checklist. We'll check in on a busy weekend for UGA, and there's some big SEC news to provide you in between now and then as well. So it's a lot of fun, wide-ranging day here on DawgNation Daily. We're glad you're with us, and we hope you enjoy Jeff Sentell right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And it was a busy Wednesday for Jeff Sentell. He was all over the place for DawgNation.com, bringing all the recruiting news that we could stand. And, well, on Wednesday, as it turned out, we could stand an awful lot of it, because Georgia, if it wasn't number one going into Wednesday, it was number one with a bullet by the time the day was over. And, Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll say good morning to you, but also just sort of a general thought for you off the kind of the top here. You know, it's almost a class that defies any kind of analysis. There is no room for, hey, who are the sleepers? Who are the guys that are going to sneak up on you? Because, I mean, for the most part, this entire class is 4- and 5-star names. They're all, the elite of the elite that everybody wanted. I mean, what does this class leave you saying as a guy who talks with the subject all day, every day?
Well, Brandon, hey, good morning, everybody, and I hope everybody, if there's anybody that's on this live stream right now and they weren't satisfied with Georgia's recruiting class on Wednesday, feel free to excuse yourself from the room. I don't want to lose any viewers or anything like that, Brandon. But if they're not happy with that, then they're going to have to wait until February of 2019 to find something that they're really happy with a class that may go above and beyond that. But man, what is it, Brandon? The equivalent kind of goes through my mind is those old Friends episodes with Joey and his turkey pants. I think Georgia, especially you, my friend, came back to the recruiting table for seconds and thirds, and by the end, it was a gargantuan overstuffed of 4- and 5-star players.
Yeah, it definitely was. And on Wednesday, we find out that your secret, undisclosed location, as it turns out, that was Plantation, Florida, there near Fort Lauderdale for the announcement of Tyson Campbell. You were able to go kind of behind the scenes with Campbell, with his family. You were able to hear kind of a lot from them, including a little bit of chatter that you wrote about the night before Campbell ultimately made his decision on Wednesday. Apparently, he was still undecided relatively late on Tuesday here. How close was it? How hard did Georgia have to battle there at the end to secure the signing of the 5-star cornerback Tyson Campbell?
Well, you get a little bit of tell about how debated it was, because I think Kirby Smart even said in his post-signing day briefing with the media that there was a point where the staff was stressed. They only thought they were getting one guy. And that kind of intersects with what Tyson and his family told me, that they didn't let the coaches know that they were going to come to Georgia until like 11 o'clock that night, less than 12 hours before the decision. Now that's kind of funny, because some of the guys that are in the class, especially the South Florida guys, they kind of let me know that they knew that Tyson was coming a little bit beyond that, or they had a good feeling. But you know, that was one of those things where it became clear to me that it wasn't a totally done deal for Georgia. And you know, 11th hour reporting is what it is. You know, the decision had not been made, and that's what I reported.
So something else that you reported a few times here on DawgNation Daily, and I don't remember how much you may have written about this, but on this show where you're kind of maybe letting your opinions fly a little bit more, you were very open about the fact that that Georgia had the chance to sign both Otis Reese and Quay Walker. For a lot of us, I think because they, at least based on the way the recruiting rankings had them listed, we sort of thought of them in kind of the same bucket. You know, 2 linebackers. Reese is probably going to play safety a lot for Georgia, but as far as the recruiting rankings go, they were both thought of as 4-star linebackers. And for a while, it was thought to be a either-or type situation, or maybe even Reese as more of a UGA lean, given the work that Jeremy Pruitt had done at Tennessee to get Quay Walker there. But you were, for the most part, unwavering, even to the point where I was almost a little bit surprised at how confident you sounded that Georgia had a chance to sign both these guys. I know you don't want to give away the whole story here. Obviously, you're going to protect your sources, but where did it come from for you that you kind of saw the Reese and Walker combo together?
Well, I guess, Brandon, this is probably me showing a little inside baseball here about why I do things the way I do. I mean, if you guys have been listening to me for a while now and reading me for a while now regarding Georgia, I've never been a big beat my chest guy or look at me or I told you so guy. That's just not the look I want to come across. I would like for my reporting and my insight to stand on its own. And I think the thing there was that was the way I felt comfortable with sharing what I was hearing without maybe going a little farther than I needed to. I thought placing the seed in the fan base's mind that Reese and Walker were a reality and definitely a possibility. I thought that was the best and most comfortable way I could go about doing that.
What do you make of the hat toss there from Quay Walker? I was a little bit curious about, what that meant. Was that just a guy that sort of got carried away in the moment? I mean, the thought was he and Pruitt were close. Obviously, a lot of Tennessee fans are kind of up in arms about this. They're going to have plenty of reason to hate Georgia, I guess, in the years ahead, given Walker, given Cade Mays and everything else that's gone down here. Is there any backstory at all behind the hat toss?
Well, there's unconfirmed rumors where people, I think they can even read those on the DawgNation message board forum. But for me, I would have been fine with everything Quay Walker did if he wouldn't have flung the hat. I know we have some very clever fans who have basically made that Tennessee hat toss sort of like Lulu and Junior at Giza and Venice.
I have seen that. I have seen that.
You've seen photoshops of like the hat winding up in Sonny Liston versus Muhammad Ali. I think Forrest Gump's running past the hat. I mean, I'm waiting for it to show up in the Star Wars movie trailer Solo or something like that. But maybe that'll be what takes down the White Walker in the Game of Thrones series. But, to me, I would have been fine with it if he would have just placed it back down on the ground. I cover a lot of this stuff for a long time, and, in some ways, at least the at least the school and the fans of that school will feel a little bit offended by that, because so many kids would love to have that offer, that Tennessee offer. And it kind of to me looks like a little careless to kind of throw it aside like that. Now, I think Kirby even touched on it in his presser as well. He said that that's probably not the way they do things. We'll, because I think it's all about a bigger picture here. Like when they say you join a Georgia program and you're part of something greater than yourself, it's not just the team or the school or the university. It's also the Southeastern Conference. And Southeastern Conference is a mighty tough league to play in, and the last thing I would think any staff would want to do was to see any of their players kind of give another roster, give another conference rival, a division rival, even more of a reason to beat somebody. But the main thing there is it's not the most respectful way to do it. To me, I was totally floored by the way I thought Rylan Goatee, the junior from Kennesaw Mountain, the way he handled his recruiting ceremony. Number one, it was original. Number two is that he made it about something greater than himself. He had all of his loved ones and family members at the podium. Everybody tries to find something clever. And when Rylan pointed to the stairs and had the trumpet player blaring the same notes that you hear at Sanford Stadium before any game, every game, I thought that was right on point. The gentleman that was doing that for Rylan was actually a longtime friend. Again, he weaves his circle of friends and loved ones into that and makes it about something greater than himself. And then he doesn't put any hat on. J.D. Bertrand and Dominic Blaylock, his two lifelong friends. I mean, these guys eat together, hang out together, play games together, work out together, go places together. Those three are basically always together. And for those two guys who had already committed to Georgia last July, to bring him the Georgia hat that he put on, I just thought it was a bullseye across every front. All the green emoji boxes were checked here. And I also think that it was really cool because Rylan told me him and his family were working on something that would be done the right way and that would be done in a way unique to his story. And I thought Mr. Goatee and his family absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, listen, I love the Rylan Goatee thing. We actually talked about that and played the audio, showed the video before you had joined us here on DawgNation Daily. But let me go back and defend Quay Walker just for a moment, though, because, Jeff, it's one thing to say that, that's not how the SEC wants to go about its business. That's not how Kirby Smart wants to go about its business. But let's also not pretend that behind closed doors, these coaches aren't trashing each other. So-and-so's about to retire. So-and-so's about to go to the NFL. I mean, recruiting is sort of a full contact, at times pretty intense business here. And Quay Walker throwing the Tennessee hat to me is no different than Gus Malzahn saying we beat the dog crap out of Georgia on the field at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I mean, it's easy for some people in Knoxville, certainly, but maybe around the SEC to want to come down hard on Walker. But the 18-year-old young men here are not the only one who at times let the moment get the best of them, though.
Yeah, and I mean, like Dan Mullen recently about Blind Squirrel and the Nut and Georgia. I saw you had fun with that one, my friend, as well.
We didn't miss that one, Jeff, as you might imagine.
Yeah, but that's kind of like a 5-star in Clark County. Brandon Adams is not going to miss one like that. Like Kirby and the staff's not going to miss one of those at Cedar
Shoals. That's a 2-foot putt for us here on DawgNation Daily.
Yeah, you drained it, man. But I don't know. Here's the thing. For so many people, and everybody can think of Jacob Copeland there as well, that's really a minute snapshot into Quay Walker. And I think he's just a much better kid than that. And that's what we try to do in our reporting here on DawgNation and SEC Country, is we try to go more than just star rating, the height, weight, and how likely he'll play right away, and whether he was a 4 or a 5-star. The thing there with Quay is, obviously it was orchestrated. I like the symphony with how his loved ones behind him all, unzipped their quarter zips, and they all had red on as well. There is some sort of, theater to it all. The curious reporter in me, Brandon, wants to go back to something really fast when, the family tells me that, Tyson Campbell, the family tells me that they were making that decision late, 11 o'clock that night, very undecided. And then they finally let the coaches know about 11 o'clock on National Signing Day Eve. And yet somehow the family, the Campbell family, had, I guess, maybe 8 to 9 hats Georgia hats on that day on his National Signing Day. I don't know if Amazon Prime works that fast in Plantation, Florida, or they borrowed hats from Marshall Morgan's family or Isaiah McKenzie's family or Sony Michelle's family, or they just stocked up with about 6 or 7 hats from every school. I'm sure there's a valid reason for that. But if you want to overthink these things or really go, CSI on it, you can find a few dangling plot threads that maybe never really get cleared up.
So I want to talk about Tommy Bush for a moment, because I'll admit, I was on the air live when Bush made his decision, and leading up to that, I was sort of scratching my head trying to figure out, does Georgia even have room for Tommy Bush? Jeff, I pay attention to this both from a professional level and a fan level, virtually every single day, and these recruiting rules are just real confusing to me. Do we have a good grasp yet on exactly how it was that Georgia was able to make room for Tommy Bush? Let me just say this. I'm glad they found room, because if a 4-star wide receiver like Bush wants to come to your school, you need to find a spot for him. But how exactly did this all work out?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things to really kind of really zoom in on there. I guess another thing that's just going to boggle folks' mind is I heard a pretty good read on this situation, and someone told me that Georgia even might have had room for another guy as well that on National Signing Day, should that guy have wanted to come to Georgia. And that just boggles my mind, because I've written about it a lot. Seth Emerson and I talk about it a lot. The main thing you're going to look at here is Georgia at 85, and it looks like if you look at the numbers, at least 3 to 4 current guys on scholarship will have to maybe have to look at their college football career very, very closely going forward if they want to continue it at Georgia or somewhere else. Just because the program's going to have to get to 85. The hard, fast rule, you want to think about what you know about the situation, is that you can never have more than 85 guys on scholarship at one time. And for me, with my reporting, I'm sitting there watching everything. I remember the situations last year with Deontay Demery. I remember the situation last year with Achille Crumpton. I remember the situation last year with Devontae Wyatt. I remember David Marvin coming in. I also remember Latrell Murchison, a guy that had committed to Rodney Garner, and then his high school coach told DawgNation that he had committed, and they were told that there was no longer room, and the offer was pulled. 11th hour on National Signing Day last year. So, to me, all that adds together, why do you need a blue shirt David Marvin if you had room in the class with all the back counting and everything else like that? Why do you need to pull an offer from Latrell Murchison, according to those sources, if you had room in the class? And mind you, this was a defensive tackle as well, and Georgia was light on defensive tackles in that class when they had to stock up with cornerbacks. There's a lot of fluidity here and a lot of moving parts here where you start sitting there, and maybe the SEC has changed a lot of their new rules with the new recruiting rules where maybe you can back count early enrollees. I've followed those rules for quite some time, but you also got to remember Georgia found a scholarship early on in the season, right before the Notre Dame game, for Hot Rod Blankenship as well. So that makes you go, okay, whose scholarship did he take? Why were they taking blue shirts? That would have been another signee to go towards a class year. So there's a lot of things there that, and this is something you're never going to get a blow-by-blow from Georgia about, or any school in the SEC, because they don't want those numbers out there. But they'll adhere to those rules, and I think we'll know a lot more maybe by August when we see who, if anybody doesn't show up, or if anybody shows up in January perhaps as a gray shirt or a target or something like that for 2019. But as I think right now, as it comes to me right now, all these guys are expected to be on campus by July and working towards the 2018 season.
Jeff, just great stuff, both here on DawgNation Daily, all the stuff that we've been reading from you at DawgNation.com. You have been all over it. It has been fantastic. We appreciate your coverage leading up to Signing Day 2018, and I guess on Tuesday I'll start hammering you with 2019 questions, so I hope you're ready for that.
I'm ready, man. I was expecting them today, actually. I know you're a short attention recruiting fan, Peter. You wanted to know about Trevon Walker. You want to know about Owen Popo. You wanted to know about all those guys.
It'll be here before you know it, Jeff. Have a great weekend. Thanks for your time.
You got it, sir. Thanks, buddy.
Good stuff there from Jeff Sentell. Always enjoying having him here on DawgNation Daily, and kind of fun watching your reaction to everything in the comment section. I know a lot of you are continuing to look forward to kind of weighing in on what you're seeing from this 2018 class. So we'll give you a chance to do that both here on the video version of our show on Facebook Live, and, of course, on the radio with our friends over in Athens on Athens Sports 960 The Rev. And, by the way, if you're in Athens and you are a radio listener and you want a way to interact with us, one of the best ways for you to do that is you can just hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle, the same as the name of the show, at DawgNation Daily. So if you're on the radio and you want to catch up with us here on the program in terms of your opinion, you can do that at DawgNation Daily on Twitter. And, of course, a lot of folks weighing in on the comment section here as well. And a lot of the conversation does sort of stem around what happens with Quay Walker. And I made my opinion a moment ago, and, certainly Jeff and I see this one a little bit differently. And, I am personally not going to be scandalized by a guy throwing a hat. A lot of this stuff isn't fun, right? I mean, the ceremonies themselves are all about, fun. And, I mean, all of this is just theater, right? I mean, y'all know I'm a pro wrestling fan. There's an extent to which all of this is just pro wrestling. Everybody sort of plays their role, plays their character, and in this particular moment, this is the character that Quay Walker wanted to play. And listen, the people in Knoxville will act like this is the worst thing they've ever seen, and sort of the super serious, capital J journalists, around the South are going to be like, oh, can you believe how, out of control National Signing Day's become? I do get all of that. I get that that's going to go down. But as I said to Jeff a moment ago, you can't tell me that behind closed doors, these coaches aren't participating in sort of lower levels of sportsmanship than that. This coach is about to retire. That coach is going to the NFL. You don't want to go play there. Look at all the stuff that goes on. Boy, are you sure you want your son on that campus? Look at all these guys that have gotten in trouble. I mean, we know that this sort of negative recruiting stuff is a big part of what goes on here. And so, by the time you get to the point where a guy like Quay Walker is getting ready to make his decision, there's already been so much sort of like roll up your sleeves, full contact, not meant for, young eyes, young ears stuff going on here, that I'm not going to act like Quay Walker is the one that broke the sportsmanship code. Now, listen, if it was a guy that threw the Georgia hat across the gym floor, would we all feel differently here on DawgNation Daily? There is an extent to which we probably would have. But in terms of Walker being the one that did it, yeah, I don't have a huge problem with that. And I do sort of like the fact that maybe Kirby Smart doesn't like it, because, I also don't want to see Georgia sort of veer in the direction of being a little bit like Florida has been under Jim McElwain, which was all talk, no action. Kirby Smart's a little bit more of the all action, no talk variety. And so I like my coach not liking it, but as a fan, as a media personality, media member, whatever it is that I do for a living, I don't really have much of a problem with that whatsoever. Alan Coley says I'd throw a Tennessee hat too. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it's obviously very easy for me to say that, because every single person watching us on video, every single person listening on the radio, all feels the same way about this. That ugly Tennessee orange, we would all try to get rid of it as fast as we possibly could. And by the way, I did love, as Jeff said, that meme that's already kind of out there of the Tennessee hat just sort of sailing on to Venice and Paris and wherever else this Tennessee hat has ended up. That's really fun stuff. Miriam Martin Corbin in our comment section brings up a good point. If it's wrong for Quay Walker to throw his hat, how many times did Spurrier throw his hat? She says that was childish stuff. And that's true. And, shouldn't we hold the coaches to a higher standard we hold the 18-year-old guys to? I mean, I'm not going to tell you an 18-year-old's a child. I mean, that's a budding adult here. But in terms of sort of professionalism and sportsmanship and sort of dignity, shouldn't the coach set the standard here that's higher than the player? And how many times over the course of Spurrier's career did he get a bad call, take the visor, throw it down on the ground? So if Spurrier can do that without a whole lot of tisk-tisking from the super serious media, then I'm going to let Quay Walker get away with what he did. Jay Minnick also kind of weighing in to say that I said it right. We all can love it, but Kirby should hate it, and that probably is true. I mean, there is an extent to which that is only fair to say here, that Georgia has sort of made its bones in 2017 by being the team that sort of makes you regret the things that you said. What was it Jonathan Abrams said before the Mississippi State game, what Gus Malzahn said before the SEC championship, whatever it was that got that defense started up before the Notre Dame game. Chauncey Gardner, the Florida guys, not the least of which. So that is what kind of Georgia's made its hallmark here. And so I like the fact that Kirby Smart's all about business, even if we can kind of, loosen up and have a little fun with it all. Tim Tatum disagrees with me, though, saying huge difference between a coach throwing a visor in frustration. I don't necessarily see it that way. I really don't. I don't see it that way. Jimmy Barnes, Caleb Tanner, the one-time UGA commit, I didn't see this. He said he threw about 6 hats. Nobody's talking about him because he committed to Nebraska. That may very well be true. Tanner going to Nebraska probably doesn't end up on as many radars, although, and this is sort of changing the subject just a little bit, but if you're Florida or Auburn even, how in the world did you let Caleb Tanner end up at Nebraska? I mean, Dan Mullen strutting around talking about blind squirrels finding nuts and, Georgia's one SEC championship doesn't prove anything. I did not think that Wednesday was a great day for Florida. And, of course, y'all are going to say, well, BA, you're a Gator hater. That's exactly what you're supposed to say, or what we would assume that you would say. Maybe that's the case here. But I think the numbers sort of speak for themselves. Caleb Tanner had bragged on Florida and then ended up choosing Nebraska. They do get Jacob Copeland, and a lot of Florida fans have given me grief because I assumed that they probably wouldn't. But they got Jacob Copeland, but they missed on a lot of other guys. Nicholas Petit-Frere, that was a battle that maybe Florida should have been able to win. Was not able to win that. Ohio State knocked that out. So not a great day for the Gators, all things being equal here when it comes to a national signing day. At least that's what was my kind of take on that. If you're watching us on video, we're going to have more of your comments here coming up, of course, with our radio friends on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. We've also got plenty more DawgNation Daily coming up right now as well, too.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Time now for our SEC Through. And, of course, we appreciate you being with us here on DawgNation Daily as we kind of roll through everything going on with the Georgia Bulldogs and take a look at the SEC. And if you like what we do when we talk about the Southeastern Conference, you're going to want to check us out on SEC Country Live. It's 3 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday through Thursday on the SEC Country Facebook page. Let me make sure I get that right. We're on the SEC Country Facebook page for SEC Country Live. We'll look forward to seeing you there Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time for that program. One of the stories we talked about a little bit yesterday becomes official now. Manish Mehta, who covers the New York Jets for one of those newspapers up there in New York, was the first to report this. But Carl Dunbar, the Alabama defensive line coach, leaving the Crimson Tide to go take that job up there with the New York Jets. And, listen, for me, this always kind of comes across as bad timing. If I have a bias about anything, I hope that my bias is in favor of players against a system sometimes that I can feel like just sort of treats the guys just a little bit unfairly. I mean, within the system, obviously, I want to see Georgia do well, and obviously I love college football, even with its faults and foibles. But, sometimes the system can be just a little bit unfair to these kids. There's no way around that. And for the defensive linemen like Stephon Wynn, people like that signed with Alabama, they thought they'd be working with Carl Dunbar, Christian Barmore, kind of the same way here, and they're not. Dunbar's going to the New York Jets, going to the NFL. And Mike Johnson, who played at Alabama, suggested yesterday on SEC Country Live that maybe one of the things that might be going on here is, Saban openly admitted on signing day during his press conference on Wednesday that he wishes they would have gotten some more defensive linemen, wanted at least one more. If you're Dunbar, that kind of puts the spotlight on you as maybe a guy who didn't get it done in recruiting. And maybe instead of Dunbar kind of cutting bait and running from Alabama, maybe this was Nick Saban kind of moving on from him after National Signing Day here. Obviously, I don't know for sure on that, but it is always sort of tough timing when a guy like Dunbar leaves essentially the day after a National Signing Day. Even if he leaves because he didn't succeed at recruiting, what do you say to Stephon Wynn and Christian Barmore right now? That's a coach leaving the SEC. Another coach coming into the SEC, or I should say staying in the SEC, is former Florida offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier. Now, Nussmeier's bounced around a bunch. He was at one point Alabama offensive coordinator, left Alabama to go to Michigan. That may have been a Carl Dunbar-type situation there as well for him leaving Tuscaloosa for Ann Arbor. But obviously the Florida situation was, for the most part, a disaster. They never really developed a quarterback. One of the reasons why McElwain ends up losing his job there, in addition to a laundry list of other things. Nussmeier looking for work, and there is a report out there that he's going to end up being an analyst for LSU. This means not an on-field coach. This means, in a role, I guess, similar to what, say, Jay Johnson has filled for Georgia. Johnson, of course, the former Minnesota offensive coordinator. To a certain extent, this is, if you're LSU, it's kind of the same thing I've said for the Georgia analyst. It's sort of better to have him than not. I don't know how great the brand for Nussmeier is, given the fact that the Florida offense doesn't do well. But clearly with Steve Ensminger, a new offensive coordinator there at LSU, they need as much help as they can get. Ed Orgeron, I think, coming off the heels of a not-so-great signing day, needs good on-field results in 2018, and maybe Doug Nussmeier helps Florida get that. One of the interesting stories that I have been following as of late is the different statements coming out of Tennessee when it comes to what, at least is for now, former Vols wide receiver Juwan Jennings. Of course, Jennings, as Georgia fans will remember, they got a couple of Hail Mary pass when these teams played back in 2016. But he also goes like on an Instagram tirade against interim coach Brady Hoke last year, got kicked out of the program because of that. And when Philip Fulmer has spoke publicly about this, you've gotten the sense that Fulmer is not – I mean, listen, I'm reading into this, but Fulmer leaves a lot for interpretation here with his words, that maybe he doesn't want Jennings to come back, even suggesting that he didn't think Jennings would be able to earn his way back. But there's some new quotes out there from Jeremy Pruitt, who sort of speaks a different kind of tone. I get the impression, and obviously this is just my opinion, but I get the impression that Pruitt may want Juwan Jennings. Obviously, for a new coach, you want as talented a roster as you can possibly get. Jennings probably not a great receiver, but he'd help Jeremy Pruitt. He's trying to find a pathway for Jennings to get back. I don't think his cause is helped, though, by all the public comments that Philip Fulmer has made about this. I continue to believe, and when I say this on SEC Country Live, the Tennessee fans get furious, but I continue to believe that the dynamic between the new coach Pruitt, who's kind of his own guy, doesn't like to take direction, at least based on some of his previous stops, the dynamic between he and Philip Fulmer could be really something to watch, and a potentially problematic situation there for the Vols. One more SEC story that I want to get to here. The least likely coach I could ever imagine to sort of like propel down from a roof using, like, I don't even know, bungee or like zip line, whatever it was, is Arkansas coach Chad Morris. He seems like he has zero personality, but that's apparently exactly what he did do as a way of sort of celebrating Arkansas signing day. We're going to show you the video on this on SEC Country Live on Monday. This is kind of a crazy thing, and for a guy like Morris, who comes across a little dry, a little dull, apparently he's a little bit more of a thrill seeker than I thought he was, and certainly more of a thrill seeker than I am. I wouldn't risk my life for the 60th best recruiting class in the country, but apparently that's what Chad Morris did, and we'll make that your SEC through. And here on DawgNation Daily, one of the things we've been doing every Friday is what we like to call our Kroger Click List Checklist. So many of you are interested in everything happening around the University of Georgia, all the big things coming up over the weekend. We want to give you a chance to do that, and of course, Kroger wants to be a part of that as well. And if you haven't tried out the Kroger Click List, you need to make sure you do so. It's the simplest, most convenient way to shop for groceries online. You can go, you can get registered, make your order. When you show up there at your local Kroger, they just deliver the groceries right out to the car to you. You don't even have to get out of your automobile. The friendly staff at Kroger takes care of you. That's why we love the Kroger Click List. We love the Kroger Click List checklist here on DawgNation Daily. And by the way, speaking of Kroger, right now you can get 4 times the fuel rewards points at Kroger when you purchase a entertainment or a restaurant gift card. That is a great, great gift for Valentine's Day. And when you buy that for the special someone in your life, you're also going to earn a bunch of fuel reward points as well and save on some gas. So that's why we love Kroger. And it's time now for our Kroger Click List checklist here on a DawgNation Daily. All right, here is everything going down with the Dogs here this weekend. Let me start with men's basketball, a home game against Auburn. Obviously, this is the kind of game that Georgia needs to win. They played well at home last time out against Florida, struggled in 2 road games against Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Honestly, I don't really quite know what to make of the future of this program at the moment, but we certainly dislike Auburn. We'd love to see Bruce Pearl come into Athens and take one on the chin. Maybe the Dogs will be able to do just that. What we do know is that the Lady Dogs are rolling. Johnny Taylor's team playing fantastic. They go on the road to number 11 Tennessee on Sunday. And for a Lady Dogs team that's been red hot as of late, beat Vanderbilt last night, what a great way to keep that momentum going with a big win at Tennessee on Sunday. So we'll cheer on the Lady Dogs as they do that. You got today men's tennis against Georgia Tech. My understanding is that's on the Tennis Channel, I believe. You'll have to check your local listings to find the Tennis Channel. But if you have it, you've got Georgia and Georgia Tech coming up today, I believe. You've also got the softball team today. They are in Tempe, Arizona for a tournament as softball season begins. They're taking on number 15 Utah today. Of course, you know the story with the Georgia softball team. This was like one of the 25 best teams in the country last year, but in a very, very deep SEC, that doesn't necessarily mean all that much for you. So they've certainly got a challenging conference to be a part of, but this is a softball program that's done pretty well. Equestrian versus Auburn. Pay attention to that. You've also tonight got the Gym Dogs on the road at Kentucky. This is the number 13 Gym Dogs against the number 6 Wildcats there. So we obviously very impressed with the gymnastics tradition at the University of Georgia, and it continues with Courtney Kupets, the brand new coach there, and number 13 Georgia on the road at number 6 Kentucky. You've got the women's tennis team and the national team indoors. That is continuing today. And you got track and field at a couple different spots. The Tiger Paw Invitation, which is at Clemson, and the Iowa State Classic there in Ames, Iowa. So a lot going on with UGA all throughout the weekend here as the spring sport's going to get going. Basketball for the men, they try to sort of right the ship here just a little bit. The women's team, the Lady Dogs, tries to keep it rolling here as it could be a really fun run into March for the Lady Dogs here. And for Georgia on the men's side of things when it comes to basketball, this may just be one of those deals where Georgia's going to try to see if it can figure out some things, get some home wins if it can, beat a big team like Auburn if you have the chance to, pull the upset there. But maybe just start to prepare yourself a little bit for the SEC tournament and see if you can be in some sort of rhythm by the time that event comes up later on in the month of March. That's our Kroger Click List checklist. We do it every Friday here on DawgNation Daily, and we hope you enjoy the UG action, whatever it is you're interested in, as it rolls on this weekend. All right, and here on DawgNation Daily, let me just say one real quick thing before we get ready to wrap up. Today is February 9th, and that would have been my grandfather's birthday. My grandfather, his name was Werner. I called him Papa. And when I was about 3 years old, he started taking me to Georgia football games. And so I think about him, obviously, almost every day, but certainly here on February 9th, on a day that would have been his birthday. And I am just really, really grateful for that gift of Georgia fandom and being introduced to action between the hedges. And if you've done that for somebody else, a young person in your life, if you've introduced them to Georgia football, then you've given them something pretty cool. So thank you to all of you who are doing just that. And by the way, if he was here with us right now, he'd be just as big a Gator hater as the rest of us are. And 260 days from right now, Georgia plays Florida again. It's our number one rivalry here. We believe it should be for all Georgia fans. And in 260 days, we think the Dogs get another win. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And for those of you with us here on DawgNation Daily, we'll look forward to chatting with you here right now. We had some comments a little earlier. We'll have time to get a few more in. I mentioned this yesterday that I wanted to try to find some time to get as many comments into the program as we could. So we'll try to do a few more of these here today. Some of y'all, listen, I'd love to sort of like get in there and do the rumor stuff with y'all. And I see all the stuff that you put in the comment section. There's certain, sort of like rumor deals that I just can't go down that road. So, but I certainly see, I certainly see what you guys post. I'll just put it that way. I like what Scott Harris says. He says 260 days till the squirrel beating. Yeah, maybe the blind squirrel can find himself another nut here. 260 days from right now. Santiago Diarn brings up a subject that we haven't talked about yet. We've just been so busy, but we're going to talk more about 93K Day coming up in April. I was on 960 The Ref this morning, and they were asking, did I think there was enough momentum to kind of build for a full stadium again for Georgia? And the honest truth is, I think there is. Now, what I have been also saying is, I live in Atlanta. I'm not in Athens every day. The truth is, with all like the stadium construction going on the end zone where they're putting the new recruiting building in and where the new scoreboard's going to be, how many seats are out of commission because of that construction? I don't know that. So it could be that 93,000 is not a possibility given the fact there aren't 93,000 seats available given the reconstruction of the stadium. But I do believe that I do believe a full stadium, there's going to be some momentum for that. And as I have been saying here, and we're going to talk about this on the show, we're just going to, like I said, we've just been so busy we haven't had a chance to deal with all the aftermath of signing day. But I do think that big-time atmospheres for spring games, we make a big deal about that here on DawgNation Daily, obviously, because we like to have fun with it. But I think those sort of big-time atmospheres are going to be more important for all of college football here starting this year, because this is the first year where official visits can be taken during the spring and the summer. And for the most part, Kirby Smart's made it pretty clear that he likes to sort of entertain his, I don't want to say highest priority, because he would certainly dispute that. Anybody that he allows to take an official visit, it's going to be a pretty high priority. But Kirby Smart seems to like these January non-football Saturday official visits. A few guys at a time, really maximize the attention. So I don't know that Georgia will go hog wild on official visits for G-Day the way that a lot of these other programs might, but it's going to be a thing, and there's going to be a lot of comparing and contrasting going on of who showed out for recruits the best on G-Day. So if you thought the push for 93K before the 2016 game was big, I think the overall motivation on the part of fans and encouragement on the part of Kirby Smart, I think it's going to be even greater here coming up for sure. Taz Ali, going back to the Quay Walker thing, says, who cares how Tennessee feels about Quay Walker with that ugly orange hat? These are the same people who cheered when Nick Chubb got hurt. And there you have sort of the basis of all SEC rivalries. We did our thing because you did your thing a couple years ago. And if you ask Tennessee fans, they'd say, well, we did that because you did blah, 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 and sort of on it goes. And listen, I'm very, I think, sort of practical and pragmatic about all of this. This is just the nature of the SEC, right? Feelings are going to get hurt. People are going to be upset. And if we're to be honest with ourselves, it's also sort of why we like. I mean, it's just entertaining. And ultimately, that's what all this boils down to. Yes, we feel a sense of sort of like unity about, the state where we may live in or the school we may have gone to. But ultimately, this is really about entertainment. And it's undeniable that Walker throwing the hat is entertaining. And by the way, for the 3 or 4 games that he plays against Tennessee in the future, those are going to be pretty entertaining as well. Philip Jordan Wells says it should be the blind squirrel hater countdown. Maybe we should. Would it be offensive to squirrels if we got like a blind squirrel on the like the graphic for the Gator hater countdown? That's actually a pretty good idea. We should maybe think about doing that. Matthew McGahee mocking me for the various UGA sports. He says the Spades tournament's going to be lit. Jonathan Adams says there's definitely going to be a rivalry after what Mullen said. Yeah, listen, I think that I think that's probably true. I think that's probably true. I think that Mullen wants to make it a rivalry. For a long time, if you want to go back to when we started the Gator hater countdown, or really when we started talking about the Florida-Georgia rivalry, the Georgia's rivalry with Florida, we started talking about it was like around like 2015 here on this show, back when I didn't think either school paid the other enough attention. I've always been motivated to get Georgia fans to care more about Florida, but there was a time when I was sort of frustrated that Florida just sort of seemed to disregard Georgia. So I think the under sort of told and underrated aspect of what happened with the blind squirrel comment is the fact that in a Q&A with like a bunch of donors and a bunch of like big time, what they call them, bull gators, like serious Florida people, first question out of the box was about Georgia. First question. Dan Mullen wants to sort of brag about being the number 14 recruiting class in the country and, whatever else. In a room full of people who care more about Florida than any group of people in the world, first question's about Georgia. So if it was my goal a long time ago to see Florida start talking more about Georgia, well, that's starting to come true here, which is kind of a cool thing to think about. Randy Whitaker says, when does the stadium expand to 100,000 people? I don't know if that's ever going to happen at Georgia. And, we could obviously kind of weigh in on, that. Different people can have different thoughts. You don't see a lot of stadiums now getting that much bigger. And I know for Athens, and I sort of feel the same way, you also got to realize I'm 1,000 years old, both in terms of my, I guess, actual age and certainly my spiritual age is 1,000. I just am kind of, I like traditions. I do like looking through that end zone, the open end zone, and seeing the bridge. You can't, from the bridge see all the way into the stadium anymore, but you can still see part of it. I think that's kind of cool. I certainly love seeing the rolling hills around Athens. I like all of that. Just more seats for me wouldn't necessarily be a great reason to do that. Plus, in terms of what the ultimate goal for these stadium experiences are, which is to make a stadium louder. That's what the average fan cares about, and generate more revenue, which is what the suits care about. I'm not quite so sure that more seats is necessarily the best way to do that on either regard. I think that creating a scarcity of seats makes the price for the individual seats go up. And, I think that for Georgia, the in-stadium, atmosphere, as other people have said, is more about enhancing the experience more so than just getting more people into the building. Other people have made a big deal about the music. I'm going to let them sort of dominate that conversation, but I don't necessarily disagree. And, I was at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and goodness knows I don't want to give, Auburn a compliment about anything, but that place was loud as could be back in November. And I don't think that Auburn fans care more about their team than Georgia fans do. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that Sanford Stadium has to take a backseat to other venues and environments at its best moments. But clearly, Auburn was, on third down and things like that, playing a little bit different kind of music. And they were playing it louder, the best that I could tell. And so when it comes to making the stadium experience better, like I said, I think it's more about those kinds of enhancements than it is about the extra seats there in the building. Arlen Block says we need a Blind Squirrel T-shirt. Yeah, we actually might need a Blind Squirrel T-shirt. That is a pretty good idea. Jerry Lewis says that it's been quiet all morning, then 10 a.m. comes and gets a whole bunch of emails. There's nothing worse than when work gets in the way of the show, Jerry. I apologize for that on your behalf, but I'm glad you're with us now. Oh, Eric Moody says that Cade Mays tweeted to Quay Walker. Did not see that. Laura Woodard has a good idea. The blind squirrel finds the SEC statue. Like I said, is this offensive if we go down the blind squirrel route? I don't quite know about that, but I think that's a pretty good idea. Eric Allen says, BA, you came through for me with your Quay Walker analysis. I absolutely love Quay. He has personality and fire. What's wrong with that? Completely agree. Scott Crisler says everybody's going to be taking their shots at Georgia now. That is so true. I have a prediction here that 5 years from now, we'll gather back here on DawgNation Daily, and maybe on a Friday during the offseason, and we'll say, did this come true? I believe that Georgia is about to become the most hated team in all of college football. More so than Alabama is hated by most of the SEC, more so than Florida was hated back during the Urban Meyer era. It's about to happen at Georgia in a way that has not been really seen anywhere else in college football. Even Urban Meyer at Ohio State. It may be similar to that, but it's going to be, I think, maybe even more intense, because I think there is a degree to which that there is a little bit of concern about the fact that, I'm going to go on a quick tangent here, and I'll try to make this really fast. Go back to the birthplace of the SEC as not the birth of the conference, but just when the SEC started kind of coming of age. 30, 40 years ago, a lot of these SEC towns were essentially all the same size. Birmingham and Jacksonville and Atlanta, Nashville, they were all about the same size, these towns within the SEC footprint. There wasn't that much of a difference between Atlanta and the state of Georgia and the other SEC states. But over the course of a long time, and I don't totally understand why this all happened, Atlanta just became a much bigger city. Mid-'60s, Atlanta became a pro sports town. By the 80s, Atlanta was giant city. Even today, part of the reason why there are so many football players that come out of Georgia every year as recruits is because Georgia has a big population. Part of the large number of players is just due to the fact that Georgia got a large number of citizens, large number of, just a high population. And, for a long time, for whatever reason, Georgia has just made it a little easy on the rest of the SEC. Georgia, was formidable and it would have its good years and certainly a very passionate fan base. But if you wanted to come into Georgia and get a player, you could. If you really wanted one bad enough, you could beat out Georgia for it. If you wanted to really commit to football with finances and stadium enhancements and just overall pizzazz, you could outdo Georgia. Georgia was content to be whatever. But that's not true anymore. All of a sudden, Georgia is sort of realizing what it has the capability of being, and I think that's an anxiety-producing idea for Alabama and Tennessee, even Florida, Auburn. That Georgia, who has just more natural resources available to it than a lot of other programs, is now looking to marshal those in one direction. So when Georgia goes into Columbia and gets Channing Tindall, that's going to be an outrageous response by South Carolina. When Georgia goes to Knoxville and gets Cade May, it's going to be an outrageous response by those fans. when Georgia locks down its own state. There's going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth about that. Now Georgia's got to keep winning on the field to sort of bring all that to bear. But listen, if Georgia recruits like this, I believe the wins in the field are coming. But you just watch. Georgia's about to be more hated than really anybody because I think there's a real concern here about the way that Georgia is just sort of collecting all the talent right now. Junior Baker, by the way, to go back to loud stadiums and crowds, says that Neyland Stadium is the by far the loudest stadium in the SEC. They say up to 103,000. So I've been to Neyland. It was certainly loud when I was there. Is that the loudest, though? I haven't been to them all. I mean, is Neyland louder than Jordan-Hare was? Jordan-Hare in November was pretty loud. I've also thought that Williams-Brice and Columbia very loud. So I think that's an interesting debate about how you kind of create that. You kind of create that that loud environment. Don Dyke says, how about the blind squirrel in the front pocket and the Gator Hater license plate on the back? Yeah, I like that. I like that. Wayne Folan says that would not be offensive to blind squirrels. So that's good to know. Zane Gregory Taylor, this is also a good idea. Can we do stuffed blind squirrels, like little stuffed animals? How much would those cost? We got to find this out. Are our folks from like Dixie Vodka somewhere else like watching right now? We gotta get a Marlowe's or a Dixie Vodka or a Kroger. Can we get some stuffed blind squirrels made? That is a really, really good idea. Really good idea. Let me get a few more comments. Philip Jordan Wells said, should on the blind squirrels. I guess that's a thing now. After Jeff Sentell and Quay Walker made it a thing. Kathy Green says, Atlanta also exploded at the 96 Olympics. Yeah, that's also true as well. Alan Verbanchik says Georgia's going to sweep the East again in 2018. I think there's a really good chance that's true. Raymond Cox says, hold off on all that hate. Dogs are too well liked throughout the nation. SEC might hate us, but we killed Goliath and no one hates David. It's an interesting point. Santiago Diarn wants the blind squirrel shirt. Josh Trotter says to be hated is good. I think that's probably true. Brian Wright says, what do you think about Otis Reese's film? So I love the possibility of Otis Reese at Georgia, not the possibility it's going to happen now. I love what his possibilities are at Georgia, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. That guy is like a fifth defensive back. I mean, I read from Ian Boyd a little earlier from SB Nation talking about the teams that sign the right kind of players. And I mentioned when he said about the tight ends, about how important it is to have good tight ends. The other thing he kind of talked about, and he knows X's and O's far better than I do. That's why I'm kind of citing him as a source right now. But he talked about defensive players that don't have to come off the field. I mean, that's what the future is about, right? Because Georgia, while it's not going to go full spread at any point in time, it's going to face teams that kind of do have some of those spread elements. And one of the things you kind of run into is an issue where you can't get your defensive guys off the field, can't get new guys out there. And in the SEC, obviously, you're going to be in those base packages. Like the Big 12 last year, they played a bunch of dime packages. In the SEC, you see a lot of nickel. In the Big 12, you see a lot of dime, 6 defensive back type looks. Well, the problem with that is if you play extra defensive backs a lot, it becomes hard to stop the run unless your extra defensive back is a run stopper. At that point in time, Otis Reese is just about as nice as it gets. I mean, that is an insane defensive weapon. To think here's this guy who can run with like a fourth receiver, be it a tight end or a wideout. He can run with that sort of fourth guy in the middle, but he can also step up and bring a ball carrier down as a run stopper as well. That's how you win a national championship right there. I mean, it just is. You got to have those kinds of versatile weapons. We're talking about loud stadiums. Philip Jordan Wells says, you got to realize I am a dad, so I like these kind of dad jokes. He says, the loudest stadium is the Blind Squirrel Forest. I hear that it's kind of nuts there. I got to admit, I probably like that. I probably like that better than some people do. Junior Baker said that Nealon was so loud when he was down there on the field that he had a headache. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty loud stadium. There's no doubt about that. Kathy Aquavia Green says never been to LSU at night, but I've heard that's true about being a loud stadium. We're going to experience that in October, I guess. Been a while since the Dogs have been there to a Baton Rouge. Dana Swain likes the idea of the stuffed blind squirrels. Yeah, this is a really good idea. This is a really good idea. We've got to act fast on this. Somebody's going to beat us to it, but we got to act fast. Scott Murphy says the LSU tickets for that game in October are already more than $250. Y'all, what are we going to do about these ticket prices, man? I don't fault Georgia for making it. I mean, look, Georgia's running a business here. They don't have any kind of obligation to artificially suppress the economy around the games. I mean, they can, raise donation limits as high as they can, do it with still selling them. And so I don't fault Georgia necessarily for raising the prices of tickets, but I do worry about the average fan here. I mean, you got Georgia fans who are going to want to go to the LSU game, which is just going to be, less than a year after they just spent $10,000 on all this other stuff for 2017. It's going to be another expensive season, I believe. Another expensive season. But you know what? It may be worth it. John Arena says Otis Reese is going to light some people up. I believe that he will. Tyler Jenkins says, how about the blind squirrel beating the gator with the cane? I like that too. Van Bird on what Kirby said about Otis Reese. Yeah, that's certainly true. All right, let me get ready to get out of here. Weston Haggie's got an idea for the shirt to say. That's pretty funny. Laura Woodard says, ready for another Thomas Davis safety. That was certainly the comparison that Terrence Edwards made the other day, that he thinks he could be a Thomas Davis type guy. That's the guy that Terrence Edwards played with. Of course, Terrence joined us at the Marlows in Dunwoody. We're going to get ready to wrap up here today. Still plenty more comments. I apologize for not being able to get to them all. You can hit me up on Twitter at DawgNation Daily. I look forward to taking some of your comments right there. Hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself. We will be back on Monday at 10 a.m. We'll have the podcast posted at DawgNation.com coming up in the next couple of minutes. I will not be late in doing that today, and then we'll have SEC Country Live again Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Make it a great weekend. Enjoy yourself. We'll talk to you soon.